letting it down and then I reload. Blow. God bless. I'm just getting started. I got this shit tucked. Got this shit. God bless. Yeah.
Y'all recording. Okay. So, hi.
On my heart, heavy is my grandfather, Elliot Kelly. That's the first EK. I am EK3, but that's the first EK. A few months before he passed away, I knew that he was going to pass away. It's one of my gifts. It's a gift that I really don't want. However, God has given me that gift. A part of that gift is that I'm living out my purpose, right? And so what happened is that the day after he passed away, I officially started my position on a media team at the Excelling Church. And ever since, my gifts have just flourished.
Like when she first came, I used to bother her all the time. Like as soon as she came through the door, I was like, yo, this nigga's mad up. She was like, she was like extremely quiet, but I kept messing with her. So, you know, she just became bro.
As I think about it, where his anniversary is approaching, I just feel the need to not only be obedient to what God has purposed over my life, but what has been instilled in me from the original EK, right? And when I think about the things that he has instilled in me, the one thing that I can say is that he taught me what love is. I'm talking about a man that was macho, a man that was faithful to God, a man that was faithful to his family. Whatever he went through in life, the one thing that he made sure was that family was always first at the forefront, and that he also put God before all of that.
Erika Kelly, my niece, impacts me with her podcast, with her life, with her accomplishments.
I wasn't certain if I wanted to be a father or not. More or less, I was running in the streets and stuff, so that wasn't the most important thing at that moment. But during a little while after, I just accepted it.
Because I didn't know what Erika was really dealing with until this podcast. Crazy thing. Because until this podcast, when this podcast came out, our friendship took like a dramatic turn. For the worst and for the best. But throughout the Life is Tricky podcast, we built a better relationship because we learned boundaries, what each other, our feelings, our moods and stuff. And I had to learn that depression is kind of real being a mom.
Yo, EK is dope. I ain't gonna lie. She's one of the best people that I've ever met. So I want to start by saying Life is Tricky is dope, but EK the person, from just one-on-one conversations with her.
The one-on-one is heavy.
Yeah, I love how her perspective on the world and everything in it, especially from a mental health perspective. You know, I think that certain conversations that we haven't been many, but the ones that we have were very impactful and allowed me to look at some things within myself. And then I've said things to her that have made her look at herself and whatnot. So it's you always leave giving and receiving something.
That's good. That's really good.
And that's the podcast too. Life is Tricky. So
Knowing that you did the same thing basically that I did, you self-healed yourself. You know what I mean? It's a self-healing for you. And now from that, you're giving to somebody, you give it back. What other people lack, or what you're lacking, you're making sure that nobody else lacks. Because you're giving something. That makes me feel good.
It was the name for me of the podcast that literally turned something on in my brain, and I'm like, what is Life is Tricky? What is she talking about? Before I even knew it was a mental health podcast.
So how has Erika and the Life is Tricky podcast made an impact on my life? Well, what I can say is that both Erika and the Life is Tricky podcast are like those friends where, you don't have to see them all the time. You don't have to hang out with them all the time. But the times that you do, it just feels great. It feels like this time was necessary, this time was needed. That is what the both of them are. And that is something that everyone doesn't possess. As a person, to be able to go a period of time without seeing someone and then just pick up at a moment where you both didn't even know you needed the conversation. That is something that's amazing. That's something that is truly impactful. To be able to say different things that just show how much wisdom you have without actually having to show how much wisdom you have. That is something that everyone does not possess. And for the ones that do, it's just amazing to be connected to them. When you listen to the podcast, it just feels so necessary. It feels like almost like you're in the room, almost like, you know, you can really join in on the conversation. And not even that, it also feels like you can take from the conversation. You can pick up some gems that, you know, you may be able to use in other areas of your life. You can realize that some of the feelings and thoughts that you may have, it's not just you having them. You're not alone in anything, because there's always someone else out there that feels the way you do, that thinks the way you do, that may have gone through something similar to what you are going through at the moment. And it's so necessary. It's so necessary. And I'm super proud that no matter what she may be going through, she still is able to get up and share. She's still able to get up and encourage other people that what you're going through right now is not end game. It's not the worst part. Life is tricky. Yes, we all have to go through different things in life. But this podcast is just showing that even though you're going to go through some things, you're going to make it out on the other end. So these are just small things of how Erika and this podcast has made an impact on my life.
Yeah, life is lifing. So to have someone that's in my age group actually not just come with their own opinions, but to come with actual facts and statistics on things that we shun away from and conversations that we shun away from, I appreciate that. And then to being a fellow mental health, you know, we gotta find a name for us, you know. But being in the mental health field as well, I appreciate seeing another Black woman that's going, you know, straight ahead, full steam, and making her mark and letting, you know, people know that we need to be seen. Our voices matter. And EK is just a dope person.
Family members look after you or help your mom or whatever you help with was a benefit for me. But it did make me feel, like I was lacking something.
She was like extremely quiet, but I kept messing with her. So, you know, she just became, I love her. Okay, I love you. I appreciate the work that you're doing for not just our community, but the world at large. And, you know, they have to be prepared because you're about to give them something that's completely unique. But they need that.
It's about to get tricky.
Yeah. It's gonna be.
Make sure we keep an open mind. Make sure we keep a good connection. And that's, you know, with everybody around you. Like the importance of being able to express and not bottle up what you feel. You know, one of the things that I would ask you, like when you attempt to, or when people attempt to, you ever think about the people that you would leave behind? And I don't think that is the impact of a suicide, that people who committed think of the people that they leave behind. I have watched you grown over the years. One thing that I have always admired about you is you have always been a go-getter, very talented, very quiet and very talented. A quiet storm, all of that. An achiever. You have always been an independent thinker.
While I'm doing this, the scripture about the paralyzed man is what I'm thinking, right? And my grandfather always told me, every time my birthday came around, kid you not, 29 years of my life, every single time that my birthday came around, he made sure that I remember that God always gave me a chance at life. I never understood what that meant up until Life is Tricky came about, right? And when he tells me that I could have died in the hospital at 3-4 years old, and I'm taking it for granted to the point where I'm 7 years old, and that was my first attempt at suicide. And every single attempt at suicide from 7 up until about 28-ish, he gave me life over and over and over and over again. So it's my duty to make sure that not only I fulfill what God has given me, but that I honor the man that has taught me what love is. Because yes, I was always surrounded by love. I got everything that I wanted as a child. I never needed for nothing. But that man made sure that I loved myself, even when I didn't understand what that was. So when Jesus says, pick up your mat, you're not paralyzed, it's what I'm doing. Doesn't matter if the doctors tell me that I have bipolar disorder. It doesn't matter if I tell myself that I'm depressed. At the end of the day, I'm always going to pick up my mat and walk.
As mentioned, EK is making her mark, but she's making her mark because her mark has already been made. She comes from legacy. We had a conversation one time in Starbucks that blew my mind when she told me who her grandmother was and the work that her grandmother did, and how she is now trying to step into those shoes, but yet wearing her own shoes. And that, to me, just blew my mind, because that's something that we wear her Yeezys, right? Because establishing legacy means that you're thinking not just about you, but you're thinking about what's next and who's next. And so when you do that, I think it exemplifies someone that takes this particular scripture in mind, that you're loving one another, right? Because loving one another means I am prepared to prepare a way for somebody else. And I think that's what EK is doing, as mentioned, and as Ezra mentioned, as a trailblazer. Go and trailblaze.
Light the path up. Let's go.
Let's get tricky up.
Life is Tricky podcast. We are so ready for the next season of Life is Tricky. You guys have to tune in. Subscribe, do whatever you need to do, but tune in to Life is Tricky. These new episodes and her guests that will be on the podcast, elite.
Gangster.
God bless. Wake up in the morning and I'm working on my stress. Deep breaths, meditate. Know I gotta get my mind straight if I really wanna be one of the greats. And they only see the tip of the iceberg, and I've been in the studio working on